Tom was a part of that media who was covering Ben Simmons today. So, Tom, we'll bring you into the conversation. And I'd like to hear, from you, what stood out about Simmons, because we really haven't heard him speak a whole heck of a lot to anybody. So here's a guy that no one knows a whole heck of a lot about.
Yeah, he has a Australian accent. It's not, I would say, not like a pure Australian accent, but there's definitely Australian sort of elements to it. Seems like a bright guy. Fairly short answers, but well thought out. I mean, he said nobody's told him he's going number one, but then he was asked, would you be surprised if you didn't go number one? And he said yes. So it might sort of be a semantic game.
Right.
And he said, too, they asked all the big guys you have, and he said, well, I think I have a different skill set than the other guys because I'm a point forward, and none of those other guys, although possibly Sarge could be a point forward, I'm not exactly sure. He can handle it somewhat, although I'm not sure maybe to the level that Simmons does. But it was interesting. He spoke for about 20 minutes, and oh, my gosh, I can't tell you how many people. There must have been 100 people around the table where he was at. It was crazy. Australian TV, lots of Philly TV, New York, everywhere. We were toward the front, so I got in there and got up toward the front, so I was able to see and hear everything, which was really good.
Yeah, I saw you tweet that out about the fact that I was wondering what the question was that he gave the answer where he said, look, don't lump me in with those guys. I'm a different player. I'm assuming he meant I'm different than Noel and Embiid and Okafor, correct? Was that what he was asked?
Yeah, I guess he was asked with all the bigs, and I guess Sarge, theoretically, like you have all those big guys, sort of how are you going to fit in with them and work it out with them? And he was just saying, like, I'm a little different. The way I play is a little different than those guys. But yeah, he handled himself very well. Murray and there were a couple other guys. Murray and Dunn talked at the same time, so I wanted to talk to them a little bit. So I left my recorder there with him and went over with my phone and grabbed those other two guys, a little bit. You just get a ton done. You can find out so much, just by asking questions. Did you come in for a private workout? Have you talked to the Sixers? It's always really helpful in terms of, kind of putting together what's going on and maybe what's happened and potentially what could happen, Mike.
Yeah, and you got Chris Dunn. You just mentioned him. What'd you learn from him? His name has been kind of linked around the Sixers the last couple of days here. Yeah,
it seems like, I asked, have the Sixers expressed interest, in you? And he didn't exactly answer, but he sort of said that, he would be a really good fit. And I said, well, they need a point guard. And he kind of smiled and said, we'll see. So, I'm not trying to make it into more than it is. It could just be off the cuff talking, but I know on Twitter people were responding and saying, oh, Okafor is gone. I wouldn't necessarily go that far, but I think that there is some interest on the Sixers end, and I think, there still is a chance the Celtics could trade that third pick. So, if you sort of put two and two together, it wouldn't be stunning, for something like that to happen.
How about the Celtics rumors, Tom? Dunn is the name that we keep hearing. So Sixers and Celtics, what do you think about the rumors, and is there anything to it, in your opinion?
Well, from what I hear, Ainge prefers, he wants a big guy, but he'd prefer a guy already in the league. He kind of doesn't want to wait for, like Bender. Bender, a lot of people like, but he's very raw and he's going to take time. So I think he'd rather have, and it's unclear if he'd be more interested in Noel, who he expressed interest in a year ago, or Okafor, there was some interest in at the trade deadline. So I can't tell you that, but, I can tell you that supposedly he would prefer a guy already in the league, big guy already in the league, and he has the number 3 pick. And, right now, my guess is Brian Colangelo's probably asking for more, than number 3 for Okafor. But then what happens, 24, 26 hours from now, when it's kind of the end, now it's time to either do something or move on to another team. Kind of last hour you get the best offers, and maybe one will change their mind, or somebody will add somebody or subtract or change something. So, but I think, from what I understand, right now that's as good a chance to happen as anything involving the Sixers. I would not be surprised if Brian Colangelo doesn't do anything. I think he really would like to sort of clear out the glut of big men, but I think he's not going to make a deal just to make a deal. He wants to get what he perceives as fair value, and from what I hear around the league, there's very differing opinions on how much value Okafor and Noel have.
Yeah, Mike and I have heard it described as a game of chicken, basically, between the Celtics and the Sixers. So which guy do you think the Sixers prefer to keep, Noel or Okafor?
It's hard to say, Pete, but I think, the defense is what they're trying, they're really trying to sort of hang their hat on. And I think even though Noel's been in the league 2 years longer and could be a restricted free agent next summer, 2017, I think they would prefer to keep him, partially because I think Okafor could bring more in return because he's younger, because the team that gets him would have 3 years until he could be a restricted free agent. So you have a guy at a reasonable number, for 3 years to see how it works. You just decide if you want to re-sign him or trade him, whatever you want to do with him. So I think the best chance of a deal would be moving Okafor and Noel stays. But, depending on what he gets, it's not impossible that he could trade, Noel. And it's not 100% out of the question that he could trade both. Not necessarily in the same deal, but depending on what he gets in return and depending if he likes maybe one of the, a big guy, whether it's in free agency or in a trade or something like that, to change things up and kind of put guys together the way he wants them, kind of his guys, if you will, with Sam Hinkie did, when he came in, trading Drew Holiday and, kind of changing things around, getting some salary control, getting rid of that big contract.
Talking with Tom Moore from Calkins Media. Earlier, we spoke with Sherrod Blakely and asked him if the Celtics take Dunn, is that an indication that a trade is coming? Would you think that if the Celtics took Dunn, that the Sixers' name would be coming up shortly thereafter?
I would say possibly, but, there's also a chance that, Ainge might think he's the best player. The Celtics saw him play a ton. Providence is not very far from Boston, so they saw him play. He didn't work out for anybody, but they certainly know him. They know what he's done. They know what he can do. I would be maybe a little wary of Dunn with the 2 shoulder surgeries, and he turns it over a lot, and he's not a real good shooter. If you have Dunn, let's say Noel and Ben Simmons, neither one is a real good shooter. Simmons, I think, be okay, but your teams are just going to pack it in on you. You desperately need shooters at those other 2 positions to stretch the floor and keep the middle open a little bit. So. I don't know. Personally, I kind of like Jamal Murray just because he is a shooter, and, he is something they desperately need, and he's a combo guard. He could play some 2 and some 1, depending on how it goes. Maybe he and Simmons could be your kind of co-ball handler, so all the pressure isn't on Simmons. But, Ainge is a wild card. You just don't know what he's going to do. He's going to get a better offer. He may decide to take Dunn and trade somebody else and clear out the backcourt, because they're the odds. They have a kind of a logjam in the backcourt. So a little different than the Sixers.
Now, you mentioned Jamal Murray, and, of course, we're hearing a lot about Dunn in the last 24 hours or so, but do the Sixers value him more, Murray more? Who do you think they have higher on their board?
From what I understand, it's Dunn. They like Dunn more. I think maybe because he's more athletic, maybe a little better defender, than Murray. And I think they like the way, or like his potential, as a point guard running a team. A lot of it is, not on necessarily what they've done, but what they project. Guys can do what they will do. Murray and Hield is kind of interesting because I've seen it compared. Murray only played 1 year and averaged 20 points at Kentucky, and Hield at the same age averaged 6 points at Oklahoma. So, if you project that he's a lot younger, that if he progresses, that's why, some people have Murray rated a little higher than Buddy Hield from Oklahoma because of the age and because he's more raw and, has more theoretically potential upside.
Tom Moore's with us, Calkins Media. We heard Brian Colangelo, I was going to say Jerry Colangelo, but Brian Colangelo kind of admit that they would look to get back into the top half of the draft, but about 8 is the cutoff. He's also said that they would think about 24 and 26. I guess the question really for you, Tom, is they're going to take number 1, but do we anticipate that after that they will be very active with those 2 extra picks and other guys on their roster? In other words, are they going to end up with 1, 24, and 26, or 1 and something else tomorrow night?
Yeah, Mike, I'll put it this way. I don't think they're going to make 3 picks. I don't think 1, 24, and 26 will be the guys that they take. I think, as Brian Colangelo said yesterday, if there's somebody they like in the mid to upper teens, let's say, who's still on the board, they could try to package those 2 to move up and grab them. they could take the best guy at 24, theoretically, and then 26 either trade down or trade for a pick another year, or even take a Euro stash, a guy who's going to play a year or two overseas. Because I don't think Brian Colangelo, I mean, if they took three rookies this year, and if Embiid plays and starts, you have 5 rookies to incorporate. He likes roster balance positionally, but he also likes it age-wise. So he doesn't want all those young guys, which every year has been happening for the Sixers. So many, between draft picks and undrafted free agents, they're just so young every year. And I think he realizes that to start being competitive, you need to kind of mix it in a little bit.
No doubt. And we know that Simmons is going to be that top pick coming up at the NBA draft. And ultimately, Embiid, I guess, is a big factor here. Because the one thing to me about Simmons is he doesn't have to be a superstar. I think on this team they have other options. He won't have that pressure that most number one guys have coming in. Because I think a lot of that pressure is now deflected by Embiid if he actually steps on the floor. I think people are looking at him to be that kind of guy. And Simmons, his role and the style of play, it kind of suits to not being a superstar.
Yeah, I mean, and they're familiar with each other. They've played together. I think they would complement each other well. With Simmons' ability to play inside and outside, and Embiid theoretically the same. But yeah, I think there's a lot of hope, and Brett Brown's and others are trying to sort of caution because he's supposedly getting to the point where he can play some light 5-on-5. But, that's a long way from playing, 25, 30 minutes or whatever his minute restriction is going to be if he gets to that point, this year, on a nightly basis, against the Dwight Howards and the elite big men of the league, when the last time he would have played a game was March 1st of his freshman year, 2.5 years earlier, at Kansas. That's quite a transition in terms of level of play, and strength, size, everything to go from one, to the other.
Tom Moore, the NBA draft, and of course, you can hear it right here on 97.3 at T Moore 76ers for more leading up to the draft. Thanks, Tom.
Sure, anytime, guys.